Welcome back. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to Retail Horror Stories. Hit the like button and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you. That way, YouTube knows to keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. It was Halloween night, and for 24-year-old Jacob Miller, the Walmart closing shift was supposed to be easy money. Most of the town was at the annual Pumpkin Festival downtown, and by 10:30 p.m., the parking lot was nearly empty except for a few cars scattered near the cart returns. Jacob was the last of the floor team still inside, assigned to zone the aisles, face the shelves, and lock up at midnight. He liked working nights because the store went quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional ding from a register were oddly peaceful compared to the chaos of daytime shoppers. By 11:15, he was rolling a cart of misplaced toys back toward the front when his radio crackled. "Hey, Jacob, I'm heading out now," came his manager's voice. "Security's making rounds, but you're clear to lock up at 12. "Got it," Jacob replied. He clipped the radio back onto his belt. When he reached the automatic doors, he saw something strange. A shopping cart near the exit was slowly rolling across the lot. Pushed by the wind, maybe, but the air was still. He stepped closer, peering through the glass. That's when he saw him. A tall man in a burlap sack mask stood just beyond the glow of the parking lot lights facing the store. The mask looked handmade, stitched across the mouth and frayed around the eyes. The figure didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't seem to breathe. Just stood there, watching. Jacob froze. At first, he thought it was a Halloween prank, someone dressed up to scare late-night employees. But the longer he stared, the more wrong it felt. The man's stillness wasn't playful, it was deliberate. He blinked, and the man was gone. Jacob exhaled a shaky laugh, rubbing his eyes. "All right, Jacob, maybe less coffee next time." He finished zoning the aisles, clocked out, and grabbed his keys from the break room. The security guard, old Mr. Hensley, was sitting in his office watching the cameras. "Heading out?" Hensley asked, barely looking up. "Yeah? You see anyone outside earlier? Some guy in a mask, maybe?" Hensley frowned. "Mask? Nah. Just a couple of teens earlier throwing toilet paper at the garden center sign." Jacob nodded slowly, forcing a smile. Probably just them. He walked to the front doors, unlocked one panel, and stepped into the cool night air. The parking lot stretched out silent and empty. His breath came out white in the orange glow of the street lamps. Then he noticed something chilling. A single shopping cart parked directly in front of his car. Not pushed crooked or half-rolled, perfectly centered, facing his headlights. The same one he saw moving earlier. He stopped, looked around. The lot was deserted. Jacob exhaled, forcing a nervous chuckle. He grabbed the cart and pushed it aside, muttering, "All right, prank's over." He unlocked his car door. Then he heard it, a tap, soft, hollow, coming from behind him. He turned slowly toward the store's glass entrance. There, under the flickering Walmart sign, stood the burlap masked man again. Closer this time, no more than 20 feet away. The light caught the rough fabric of his mask, the dark thread stitched into a wide, uneven grin. Jacob's heart kicked into overdrive. "Hey, store's closed, man," he yelled. No answer. He reached into his pocket for his phone but fumbled it onto the asphalt. When he bent to grab it, he heard footsteps. Fast, heavy, closing the distance. Jacob jumped into his car, slammed the door, and hit the lock. His hand shook as he jammed the key into the ignition. The masked man stopped at the edge of his headlights, just stood there, staring. The car engine roared to life. Jacob reversed fast, tires screeching. He didn't even bother to look behind him. He sped out of the parking lot, breathing hard, heart pounding. He didn't stop until he was halfway home. The next morning, Jacob called his manager to report what happened. She sounded skeptical but promised to review the cameras. By noon, she called back, her voice tight and low. "Jacob, I need you to come in." When he arrived, she led him to the security office. Hensley was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he scrubbed through the overnight footage. The first camera showed Jacob closing up, normal, then the cart outside rolling across the lot. But the wind was still. The second angle caught something worse. The masked man appeared just beyond the store lights. He wasn't alone. For a few seconds, two more figures stood behind him, barely visible, faces obscured by masks that looked like cracked porcelain and canvas. They stood completely motionless until Jacob walked away from the doors. Then they split up, one toward the garden entrance, another toward the loading dock. The video cut to black. Power surge hit all three exterior cameras at once. Hensley muttered. "Never seen that happen before." Jacob leaned closer. "Did you call the cops?" "Already did." They checked the property this morning. Found footprints, but not just one set. He pulled up a still frame, a blurry freeze of the parking lot hours later. The front doors were wide open, and in the reflection of the glass, a handprint was visible on the inside of the door, smudged with something dark like dirt or grease. Hensley cleared his throat. "We've been locking those doors from the inside for years. No one could have opened them without a key." Jacob stared at the image. The smudge looked like 5 long fingers dragging downward. The police never found the intruders. A week later, the Walmart added new floodlights in the lot, but employees still whispered about the Halloween break-in. Some swore they saw movement near the garden center late at night. Others claimed the cart bay door would unlock itself even when latched. Jacob quit 2 days later. He told himself it was just a Halloween prank. Some twisted locals playing dress-up. But every October since, he's received the same anonymous text from an unknown number. "Working the closing shift this year?" And attached is always the same photo. A blurry image of a Walmart parking lot under an orange sky. And a man in a burlap mask standing near the cart return. Halloween night in Eugene, Oregon was supposed to be quiet. The rush for decorations had ended hours ago, and the aisles of the Home Depot echoed with the sound of pallets rolling and forklifts beeping in reverse. Ryan Delgado, 29, and his co-worker Travis were the only ones left on the night crew. Their task was simple: restock the lumber section before the morning shift. They'd done it 100 times. By 10 p.m., the store lights dimmed to half brightness, company policy after closing. The orange glow made the aisles feel smaller, like the air itself was heavier. Travis, always the jokester, nudged Ryan. "Bet the Halloween decorations are going to walk off the shelves tonight, man." Ryan smirked. "Yeah, sure. Maybe the ghosts need some plywood." They split up, Ryan in the 2x4 aisle, Travis down near the pressure-treated boards. The hum of the ventilation system filled the silence. Then Ryan heard it. A faint buzzing noise. Not the forklift, something sharper, rhythmic. He turned toward the noise and froze. At the far end of the aisle, a nail gun lay on the ground, still running, air hissing in short bursts like it had just been used. Ryan frowned. He'd unloaded that tool earlier and unplugged it himself. He walked closer, cautious. The nail gun's compressor cable snaked behind a stack of plywood sheets, plugged into an outlet that shouldn't have power after hours. He crouched down and turned it off. The moment he stood up, something heavy crashed behind him. Ryan spun around. A stack of boards had fallen from the next aisle over, but it wasn't random. The boards were stacked neatly across the path, blocking the way out. "Travis," he called. No answer. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly down the lumber aisle. Slow. Dragging. Ryan stepped backward, heart hammering. He peered through the narrow gaps between boards and saw a face. A man stood still at the far end of the aisle wearing a mask made from a Home Depot apron, the orange fabric crudely stitched into shape with holes cut for eyes. "Hey, you can't be back here," Ryan yelled. The man tilted his head slightly. Then, from somewhere behind Ryan, another nail gun fired, once, twice, into the air. The echo rang like thunder in the metal rafters. Ryan bolted. He vaulted over the fallen boards and ran down the aisle toward the loading bay. His radio crackled with static. Then Travis's voice broke through, panicked. "Ryan, there's static. 2 of them." Ryan stopped in his tracks. 2? He turned toward the sound of the loading bay and saw Travis sprinting toward him from the opposite end, his orange vest half torn. "Go!" Travis gasped. "They locked the back gate." They darted down the center aisle, motion sensors flicking lights on as they ran. Behind them came the rhythmic clack of boots on concrete. 2 pairs, deliberate and unhurried. They reached the front entrance, locked tight. Ryan grabbed the emergency bar, but the alarm didn't sound. It had been disabled. Travis fumbled for his phone, calling the cops. Then something whistled past his ear, a nail, embedded deep into the drywall beside his head. The sound came again, closer. Ryan grabbed Travis and dove behind a display of paint cans. Nails pinged off metal shelving as the masked men advanced. Burlap, canvas, and that orange apron face all illuminated by the dying store lights. Ryan whispered, "We'll go through the garden center." They moved fast, crouched low, staying in the shadows. The emergency lights glowed a faint red across the glass greenhouse doors. Travis reached for the handle and stopped. The lock was already cut. They slipped outside into the cold October air, running through rows of stacked soil bags and Halloween inflatables deflating in the wind. When they reached the chain-link gate, it too was open, just wide enough for one person to slip through. They didn't question it. They ran until they reached the main road, waving down a passing car. By the time police arrived, the store was empty. No intruders, no sign of forced entry. But one thing caught the responding officer's attention. Near the lumber aisle, on the concrete floor, were 3 handprints smeared in black dust, like someone had gripped the ground before standing up. And hanging on a nail above the register counter was a folded Home Depot apron, stitched crudely into a mask. Ryan quit the next morning. The police never found the intruders, but 2 weeks later, the night manager swore he saw someone standing in the lumberyard on the security feed, motionless, wearing what looked like an apron. The camera cut to static, and when it came back, all the exit doors were unlocked. 17-year-old Lena Harper had worked at Target for only 3 weeks when she got her first closing shift on Halloween night. It was quiet inside the store, too quiet. The candy aisle was stripped bare, and the only people left at 9:45 p.m. were 2 cashiers and 1 security guard doing his last rounds. Lena's job was simple: clean up the women's fitting rooms before locking up. She didn't mind. It was peaceful work, folding clothes left in piles, hanging them back up, humming along to the faint music over the speakers. The only sound breaking the silence was the occasional ding from the self-checkout lanes. When she pushed the fitting room door open, the automatic lights flickered on. A faint smell of perfume mixed with something stale, like wet fabric. She wrinkled her nose, shaking it off. There were 6 stalls, all empty, except for the last one, where the red curtain was pulled shut. She knocked lightly. "Hello? We're closing soon." No response. She tried again. "Ma'am?" "We're locking up in 10. Silence. Lena crouched down, hesitated, then peeked beneath the curtain. Just shoes, small white flats facing the mirror. The person wasn't moving. Her chest tightened. We're closed," she whispered, her voice wavering. Still nothing. She stood up quickly, backing away. "Okay, security can handle it." As she turned to leave, she heard the sound of breathing. Slow, shallow, coming from inside that last stall. Lena's heart pounded. She looked down again. The shoes hadn't moved, but the curtain swayed slightly like someone had brushed against it from the inside. She forced a shaky laugh. "Not funny, you guys. If this is a prank, you win." The breathing stopped. Then, click. A faint metallic sound came from behind her. She spun around. One of the other fitting room curtains had moved, just a little, like someone had slipped behind it. Lena stepped backward toward the hallway, her throat tightening. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dim fitting room, landing on the mirror. For a split second, she saw her own reflection, and behind it, a blurred shape standing perfectly still in the corner of the reflection that shouldn't exist. Her flashlight flickered out. She stumbled backward, hitting the wall, gasping. "Okay, screw this." The curtain of the last stall slowly opened. The shoes were gone. In their place was a porcelain mask, cracked along the cheek, lying on the floor. Lena bolted. She sprinted into the hallway, nearly colliding with the security guard rounding the corner. "Whoa, whoa, what happened?" he said, holding up his hands. "There's someone in there," she stammered, pointing back toward the fitting rooms. The guard frowned and unhooked his flashlight. "Stay here." She watched as he walked down the hallway, light cutting across the tiled floor. He pushed each curtain open one by one. Empty. All except the last stall. "Sir?" Lena called softly. The guard didn't answer. His flashlight beam stopped moving. Then the lights above them flickered, buzzing loudly. Lena's pulse roared in her ears. The guard stepped backward out of the fitting room, his face pale. "We're locking up." "Now." "What did you—" "Now," he said firmly. He locked the door to the section and radioed the manager. Within minutes, they closed early. Lena tried to ask again what he saw, but the guard just muttered, "Didn't see them come in, didn't see them leave." The next morning, store management checked the overnight security footage. At 9:42 p.m., a woman in a long beige coat entered the fitting room area carrying several items. She never checked out, never left through the front doors. At 10:07, the camera feed glitched for 3 seconds. When it resumed, the fitting room curtains were moving, all 6 swaying slowly back and forth, but no one was visible. The last frame before the lights turned off showed a figure in the mirror, standing perfectly still. Its head tilted slightly to the side, mask pale white, eye holes black and empty. The face was half out of frame, but the timestamp burned into the corner read 10:13 p.m. Lena quit the next day. She said she couldn't even walk through the clothing section without feeling like someone was behind her. A week later, a janitor cleaning the fitting rooms after hours found something wedged between the mirrors, a folded piece of fabric that had been cut into a crude mask shape. Written in permanent marker across the inside were 3 words, "Are you alone?" Halloween night in Littleton, Colorado, had dropped below freezing by the time Evan Ross finished his shift at Best Buy. The parking lot was a mirror of cold asphalt, the yellow lights buzzing against a deep orange sky. It was 10:05 p.m., closing time. Everyone else had already gone except Evan. He'd stayed behind to help an older couple who came in right before closing to exchange a broken soundbar. When the doors locked behind them, the silence was heavy. No more music, no intercom chatter. Just the hum of the building and the whistle of wind cutting through the lot. Evan carried the returned box out to the drop-off cart. That's when he noticed a white SUV parked crookedly near the far end of the lot. Its engine off. Headlights dim. It hadn't been there an hour ago. He shrugged it off. Maybe a lost customer, maybe security. But when he turned back toward the store, he caught something in his peripheral vision. A shape near the cart return. A person, tall, still. They wore a burlap sack mask, the rough fabric rippling slightly in the wind. Evan froze mid-step. "Hey," he called, voice cracking. "Store's closed." No reply. The figure tilted its head slightly to the side, like studying him. Evan took a step back toward the glass doors, fumbling for his key card. He blinked, and the figure was gone. He told himself it was just a Halloween prank. The store was near a college. Someone probably thought it'd be funny. Inside, he powered down the registers and grabbed his backpack. Before leaving, he texted his girlfriend. Heading home now, dead tired. Then he walked back out to his car. The lot was empty again. The white SUV was gone. He unlocked his car, tossed the backpack in the passenger seat, and started the engine. As he reversed, his headlights flashed across the cart return. Empty. But when he looked in his rearview mirror, he saw something that made his chest seize. A man in a burlap mask standing directly behind his car. Evan spun around. The space was empty. His hands shook as he shifted into drive. "You're losing it," he muttered. He drove out of the lot, turning onto the main road, streetlights streaking past. The radio played soft Halloween ads. Haunted houses, pumpkin patches, but he barely heard them. A few miles down, at a red light, he reached for his phone to cue up music. That's when he caught movement in the rearview mirror again. Something shifting in the back seat. He froze. The car was silent. He slowly angled the mirror down, just enough to see the burlap mask, hanging from the headrest behind him, facing forward. He slammed the brakes. The mask swung forward, hitting the windshield. It was empty, just fabric and dirt, but it smelled like rust and smoke. Heart racing, Evan threw open the door, stumbling out onto the shoulder. Cars honked as they passed. He yanked the mask off the headrest and hurled it into the ditch. Then he noticed something worse. The rear hatch of his car was open just a few inches, latched but not fully closed. Someone had been inside. He dialed 911 with trembling fingers, explaining everything in broken gasps. By the time deputies arrived, the mask was gone. Only damp tire tracks led away into the dirt behind the ditch, headed toward an old industrial lot that backed up to Best Buy's property. They swept the area but found nothing. No footprints, no vehicles, no cameras facing that side of the lot. 2 days later, the store manager called him in. "Evan, you should see this," she said, pulling up security footage from that night. The screen showed the empty parking lot at 10:12 p.m., then the white SUV pulling in. A minute later, a tall man stepped out wearing a burlap mask. He walked to the side entrance door and knelt down, holding something metal. A flash, like a spark. When the man stood, the side door alarm panel was dark. He walked straight toward the back of Evan's car. Then the footage glitched, static filling the screen for 6 seconds. When it returned, both vehicles were gone. The timestamp, 10:34 p.m. The manager's voice shook. The alarm wire was cut clean through. We didn't notice until the next morning. Evan quit the same day. A week later, he bought a dash cam. Every Halloween since, it records the same thing when he parks at night. A single frame of static and then just for a heartbeat. A man in a burlap mask standing under a streetlight, head tilted, watching. It was almost 3 a.m. when Marcus Hale's shift finally slowed down. He'd been working the overnight at a small 7-Eleven off I-15 in rural Nevada for 6 months, and Halloween night was always strange. People in costumes, prank calls, the occasional drunk trucker looking for coffee. But that year felt different. The wind was dry and warm, the sky a sickly orange from distant wildfires, and the parking lot lights kept flickering, buzzing like angry bees. Marcus leaned on the counter scrolling his phone when the motion sensor above the door chimed. Ding! He looked up. No one came in. The door stood still. Outside, the parking lot was empty except for a single gas pump swaying slightly, nozzle still in place. He frowned, muttering, "Wind must have set it off again." But then it chimed a second time. Ding. Marcos stepped around the counter, peering through the glass. The street beyond the pumps was deserted. He turned to head back and froze. On the far edge of the lot, just past the light's reach, someone stood watching him. A tall figure in a dirty jacket. A burlap mask covered his face, seams uneven, holes black and empty. Marcus blinked, thinking maybe it was a costume. But the figure didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even shift his weight. Just stared. Marcus grabbed the door handle and locked it. His heart thudded in his chest. He reached under the counter and hit the small alarm toggle that called the night manager, but the line was dead. He checked the camera monitor, static on all outdoor feeds. That's when the lights flickered again. When they came back, the man was gone. Marcus stepped back from the glass, breath quick. He whispered to himself, "Okay, just stay calm." Probably some drunk messing around. He turned, and the door chimed again. Ding. Marcus whipped around. The door was still locked, but standing inside the store, halfway down aisle 2, was a man in the same burlap mask. Marcus stumbled backward. Hey! The hell are you doing in here?" The man didn't move. Marcus glanced toward the backroom door, only 10 feet away. He bolted for it, but before he reached the handle, the lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed the store. He could hear breathing, close, slow, and steady, not his own. Then the shuffle of footsteps behind the counter. Marcus yanked his phone out and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam shook in his trembling hands as he scanned the aisles. No one. He started backing toward the exit. His light caught something on the floor near the Slurpee machine, a smear of black dirt leading toward the storage door. The metal door creaked open just an inch, like someone had slipped inside. Marcus's voice cracked. "If you're still in here, I'm calling the cops." He stepped closer, flashlight trembling, heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He reached out, and the door slammed shut. He screamed, dropping the light. It rolled across the floor, spinning its beam toward the window. For half a second, it illuminated two more figures outside the glass. One wearing a cracked porcelain mask, the other with a crude canvas hood, both staring in. Then the power snapped back on. All the lights blazed white. The store was empty. Marcus locked himself in the back office and called 911. The dispatcher stayed on the line until deputies arrived 15 minutes later. When they checked the security system, every camera had glitched at 3:02 a.m., the same moment the power cut out. Outside, the officers found 3 sets of footprints in the dust around the gas pumps, all leading toward the highway, none leading back. Marcus quit the next morning. The owner replaced him within the week. 2 nights later, the new clerk called police after hearing the chime repeatedly, even though the door was locked. When officers arrived, they found no intruders, just a burlap mask hanging from the handle of the cooler door, and the words, "See you next, Halloween," scrawled across the fogged glass in something that looked like ash. The fingerprints couldn't be traced, and when they pulled the security footage, the last frame before the feed cut showed Marcus's reflection still visible in the glass. Even though he'd already quit,